Today is December 29th, 2024, and welcome to the 421st episode of the So Video Games podcast. Here in this show, I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. My name is Brad Galloway. I'm the one-man host of the show, and I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com, a website that uses the full range of review scores from 0 to 10, while also offering full accessibility information on every review that we publish. Thank you, personally, for joining me today on this lovely December afternoon. As per usual, going to kick things off with housekeeping, where I talk about tidbits, news items, industry happenings, and basically anything randomly game adjacent that catches my eye in the last 7 days. So let's see. First off, I want to give a big thanks to Carlos Rodella for coming back to the show, his little guest appearance last episode. If you missed that, he popped in to do the Game of the Year show. Needed some backup to help cover even more games than we already do here, and he was glad to come back for a mo. So thanks very much, Carlos. Had a lot of fun, and I know that the listeners really enjoyed having you back for a brief minute there. What else do we have? Speaking of the Game of the Year show, I fucked up, and I want to give apologies to Ron and also Way to Go. They both had sent in their top 3/1 disappointment of the year, and I did not get those on the actual show because I am just a bumbling buffoon. So big apologies to both those guys. Here's Ron's list. He had sent it in. I had asked for last minute submissions, and he had sent his in like as I was in the middle of recording. So I meant to check in the middle of the show and I forgot to. So my bad. But Ron's choices are Marvel Rivals, Elin, which I don't know what that is, and his not disappointment is Batman Arkham Shadow. And Ron has no disappointment of the year. Okay, fair enough. And as for Way to Go, this is one I just completely missed. I was compiling all the info and I just somehow didn't see it there. So my bad, dude. I sincerely apologize. His picks were Dark Souls, which is unfinished, and he's currently going through Sen's Fortress. Night in the Woods, almost finished. Love the writing and the vibe. And Cocoon, cool mechanic and visuals, wish there was a bit more story. And his disappointment is not playing enough games. Yeah, I hear you, man. No matter how much time I devote, no matter how many games I try to get to, there's always more, and there's just never enough time. That is just like the human condition, I guess. So, all right, so there are the missing top threes. Again, apologies, gentlemen, sincerely. Moving on. Huge congratulations to good friend Brandon Bales. He used to work for me. He was a writer at Game Critics a while back. Fun guy, really smart, and he left us to go do acting in Hollywood. And he put up a notice on Instagram that I saw. He finally made one of his lifelong dreams come true. He got on a Star Wars show. He's a big Star Wars fan. I know this has been a thing he's been wanting for a long time. And he was just in the most recent episode of Skeleton Crew, which is great because not only is it Star Wars, which is just kind of baseline awesome, but Skeleton Crew is a fucking fantastic show. I've talked about it multiple times here. I think it's really awesome. It's basically Star Wars by way of the Goonies, or perhaps Goonies by way of Star Wars. And it is just the best fucking thing. Bunch of kids in a runaway spaceship in deep space going on a pirate-themed adventure. Real 80s kind of like unsupervised children in danger vibe. I mean, really classic stuff. And Brandon, he is he's officially called the Lanupin security officer. I think he's like one of 3 on the show, but he gets a little more screen time. He is chasing down the heroes on a little walkway. He shouts out some stuff. He gets a couple lines, and then he got punched by Jude Law, who plays one of the main adult characters in the show. Fucking awesome. Really excited for him. It was just great. And he got way more screen time than I thought he was going to get, which is even more exciting. Nothing to do with him, but you know how the Star Wars people kind of are chintzy with their time there. But he doesn't have an official character name, but he kind of made up one for himself, Nib Nevins, and I think that's a perfect Star Wars name. So if anybody out there wants to add him to the Star Wars lore, he is now canon, and I could not be happier for my friend Brandon Bales. So congrats, dude. Very, very excited. That's fucking big time. So looking forward to you being a Jedi in the next show. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I wrote down some notes to myself like a week ago, and then I did not write enough information. You do that sometimes where like you write a note and you think, yeah, I totally remember what that is. When I see this note, I will do it the next time. And then you go to look at your note and like, what the fuck was I trying to tell myself? What did I write? Maybe your handwriting's too sloppy, which happens to me. Or maybe you just like write a word and you think there's no way I'm going to forget that word and what that means. And then you come back to it 7 days later and you're like, I have no idea what I was trying to tell myself. But I did remember, so yay for me. There was a discussion that came up recently. I want to say it must have been in the So Videogames Discord. I feel like that's where it was. And I feel like this was kind of kicked off by Elijah Beam, who is in the Discord and who writes for Game Critics sometimes. And he does a lot of writing. He's got a book coming out pretty soon on Dead Space, which is pretty amazing. But basically the gist of it was, oh gosh, what was it? There was some developer that was tweeting on Twitter, or maybe it was Blue Sky. And they were like, oh, I'm so mad because our game ended up on the top 10 worst games of the list or year, or the lowest scored game or something like that. And they were like, oh, that sucks because that's how it was 6 months ago. And we've patched so much since then. And it's totally different experience. And it's totally not fair that no one will go back and give us a second look. So let me just preface this whole thing by saying, look, I am not anti-developer. I am not anti-game. I am not anti-indie. There are very few things I'm anti. And like when it comes to games, very few things I'm anti in the game sphere as well. But I think that we just need to have a quick discussion. And anybody listening, I'd be really curious to get your thoughts and feedback on this. Feel free to hit me up, email, or in the Discord, or, whatever, social media, anything you want. I don't care. But let me take you back to a time, long time ago, where we didn't have persistently online connections. It may seem strange now, but there was a time back in the day when your console was not connected to the internet in any way, shape, or form. It was just a box that you had in your house. And that's all it did. It hooked up to your TV, and that's all. There was no modem, there was no internet, nothing like that, right? So that's a while ago, but I am old enough to remember those days. I lived through those days. And I remember when consoles were first starting to integrate online technology. I remember the earliest days of it. And at that time, I clearly remember this because we had discussions at Game Critics back in the day. And in case you don't know, just to age myself a little bit, GameCritics.com, the website that I am in charge of, has been around for 26 years. 26 years. I don't know how we stack up against other online websites, but I feel like that's a pretty decent time to be covering games consistently, running reviews, think pieces, etc. So 26 years, pretty significant amount of time. And I remember this very specifically when we first started talking about online technology, and I'm like, well, this actually sucks kind of, because the problem is that I feel like developers are going to get lazy. Now, I'm not calling anybody lazy. I'm just like paraphrasing myself back in the day. And what I meant by that was we are not going to get finished products. That was the big fear. We were going to get ship now, fix it later. We were going to get a bunch of patches. We were going to get stuff that got to market too soon. And that's essentially what we got. I was dead on correct about that. Now, again, I'm not calling anybody lazy. I know there's reasons for this. But this circles back to the argument or the discussion that was had about how this developer seemed like it was really unfair that reviewers didn't go back to give their game a second evaluation 6 months after it had been out and patched and updated and rebalanced and so forth and so on. So, like, I know I've said this before, and if you heard this before, bear with me. But, I am the senior editor of GameCritics.com, been there forever, been the editor for like 20 years, and probably more than that. And, like, this is not an exaggeration, okay? This is literally not an exaggeration. Every single day, except for maybe Sunday, so maybe 6 days a week, I get solicitations for brand new games. I mean, at least 10 games a day, and I think that's even underselling it. I probably get more than that. But can you imagine getting offers for 10 brand new games per day, and then every single one of those people is like, I really want you to fully review my game. I want you to write an article about my game. I want to do an interview with you about my game. I want to be on your podcast. I want you to make a video about it. Please devote all your free time to my game. And sometimes we do. But like, if you just look at the numbers, there's literally no way anybody can keep up with that flow, right? No way one person could do it, certainly. But like at Game Critics, I've got about, 15, 20 people who rotate through the staff and who are writing for me at any one time. And even with all of those people, we can't get all these games covered. Like I end up just like giving away codes or just not even doing anything, throwing them away. Like we get too many games that we can cover, and that's just the reality of it. So imagine launching your game for whatever reason, I get it. And okay, again, another asterisk. I feel like this is a very a looping back and forth argument. But like, I get that like not everybody has the choice when to launch. Like one point that was raised earlier in the discussion was sometimes a publisher forces somebody to launch before they're ready. And I get that. And if that happens to you, I'm really sorry. You know, that sucks. But I know that not every publisher forces every game to launch before its time. There's a lot of indies that launch before their time, and that's a whole thing. Now, asterisk again for early access. Now, I am not a fan of early access. You know, I do not like to play games before they're done. I want to see your 1.0 and nothing else, and that's just me. That's fine. That's just a personal statement. And if you're in early access, that's fine. You get a pass. Like, you can do whatever you want. I will not bitch about it. Doesn't bother me at all. Do whatever you want to do. You want to get your game out. You want to get feedback from the players. You want to polish it as you go. Totally fine. I support that. But I will not review it. I will not cover it. I will not spend time on it personally until it like hits 1.0. But for games that launch in 1.0 and that are clearly not done, that are broken, that are unbalanced, that clearly needed patches, that clearly needed more assets or had problems or whatever, like those things, you only get one chance to make a first impression, right? That's how the phrase goes. And so can you imagine, just from my perspective, just for a second here, you launch a game, it's in 1.0, you're charging money for it, and not everybody can get a refund sometimes. It's not all as easy as Steam's 2-hour limit, right? And so you get this game, you know it's not ready to go, but you put it out for whatever reason, and a critic like me sees your game, plays your game, you know, spends 2-3 hours on the day that I have put aside for your game, and it sucks. And I go, okay, well, this game sucked. It was not good. It was broken, like, you know, it crashed, like whatever. And then 6 months later, you have spent 6 months patching, improving, fixing, doing all these things, and you want me to go back and review, you know, like check your game out again. Like I don't have time for that. I mean, if you remember, I get offers for like 10 new games per day. That means your game was 6 months ago. I already gave it its shot, and in giving you your first shot, I already ignored 9 other games that day. And now you want me to come back to it again after you already had your turn, and you want me to ignore some other game. Every time I look at your game, that means some other game is not even getting their first shot, right? So it's like, it's all about really making that first impression. And I don't think it's fair or even reasonable for a developer to say, well, yeah, I did launch in 1.0, and yeah, it wasn't in the best shape, and yeah, you did spend time on it, and yeah, you did make a video, and yeah, you did a review and a write-up, and I want you to do it all again because now it's in better shape. I don't think that's really fair. And I'm not saying I will never do it because I have done that, but you cannot expect it as a regular course of business. You cannot expect a critic to regularly check back in on your game. How could we possibly do that? Like, how am I going to remember your game 9 months from now when 8,000 other games have come out since then, and I don't keep a spreadsheet about when's the last time I checked in on them? And even if I did, I don't have the time to replay to see what's different. How is it different? Does it feel different? Does it look different? It's just not reasonable, man. So like, you got to really be careful with your shot. Don't put your game out in a 1.0 and charge money for it if it's not truly done. And if you get forced, well, I feel bad for you, man. I do. And you know, it's going to be effort on your part to try to get people to look at it again, but just the assumption that we should be going back as critics with the incredible workload and the pace of the industry right now, that we should regularly be going back to games and re-reviewing them after each patch and each update, it's just not feasible at all. So if your game clicks with me on a personal level, yeah, I will make some space for it. Sure, I've done that. For example, Capes came out in 1.0, and it was not good. I mean, it was a good game. I could see the bones of it, but it had problems, had tons of problems, and I bounced. But I liked it so much personally that I made it my little mission to go back and check. But that was just because I liked it. I like turn-based tactics. I like superheroes. I like the art style. I like the writing. Like everything about it, except for the gameplay, like kind of landed with me. So it earned a place, but not every game does that. And I just think it's really unreasonable for developers to think that we should be doing that. It's just not a thing that should happen. So and I feel bad. It's just the reality of the situation. I wish I had more time. I don't. So I think really it's going to come down to getting a good connection with your players. Like if you launch 1.0 in a bad state and you have players that somehow hang on, or they support you, or they just keep wanting you to better your game. And if you do get in better state, I mean, hopefully those players will make enough noise that it'll generate some more attention, and critics like me will go back and check again. Or I guess you can always send out another update in email or something. But like, honestly, I don't even pay attention to most of those because I get so many of them every day. So I guess this is just my really long-winded way of saying, look, I get it. If you feel like you poured 2 years of your life into a game and it launched and nobody paid attention to it and you didn't get rich and you feel really, really depressed about it. Like I feel that, okay? Like I am a human being. I feel sympathy for you. I do. But you have to be smart, man, and you have to know what the market's like, and you have to know what the pace of the market is like and what the volume of the market is like. And knowing all that, even if you do everything right, you've got such a really small chance of making it big with your game. You've got to give yourself the best possible chance. And that means don't launch in 1.0 when your game still has problems. Push back against your publisher. Take 6 more months if you can. Do whatever you can do to get that game looking its best, playing its best, being its best. And if you don't, then please understand that we just don't have time to go back all the time. So it's just not realistic or reasonable to expect us to do like a 3-month check-in on every game that comes across our desk. And I know that that's going to piss some people off. I know some people are going to say that's unfair of us, or we're being mean or whatever, but like, it's just the nature of the biz. And like, you've got to like help yourself, help me, help you by putting your best foot forward when it comes to making that first impression. Right. So, all right, looking forward to anybody's thoughts, feedback on that. I have one more topic of discussion. Let's check my notes here. Well, I guess today is the day that I piss off every developer in the world. We had some discussion, and again, I think this originated in the So Videogames Discord. I'm pretty sure. Yes, I'm pretty sure it was talking about the use of AI in games. So I am on record as saying I don't think AI is a good thing. There are very, very, very few applications I think it should be used for. It uses up a lot of electricity, uses up a lot of water. It's putting people out of jobs. And I just don't think the product is rarely any good. I don't think the writing is very good. I mean, I think if you want to make realistic looking porn with people who have not done that porn, I guess that's what it's good for. Or you can finally have your dream of having sex with a Spider Woman with 3 breasts and 8 legs or something. I mean, I guess that's what it's good for. So cool, but like, it shouldn't be replacing artists and writers and all that stuff. And so I'm generally anti AI, just in general, baseline. So just know that before I say the rest of this. But I'm seeing more and more games that have AI in them in some way. And I'm not talking about like pathing or like enemy behavior. I mean, we've had that kind of like basic AI, which is totally different. I'm talking about like generative AI, like that's all the rage right now. But I can think of at least 3 or 4 recent games which used AI specifically to generate art assets. And I have a real problem with that. It's not always made known up front. Sometimes it's just something you find out later on. And, you know, I get it, right? Like maybe you're a small publisher or a small developer. You don't have money and you feel like you want your game looking best, like I just talked about, but you're like, oh, I'll just have, one of these AI things generate me some assets and I'll put it in and it'll be fine. And who cares? Like, no, man, I don't think that's a good thing to do. Like, if you are making a game, you should make it, right? And if you don't have artistic skills, not all of us do, you should find an artist. I guarantee there's going to be somebody out there that would want to get in on the ground floor with you, who would, cut you a price break for, because you're friends, or because they want a good entry into the industry, or because they want a 1% share of your profits, or who knows what, right? There's artists out there, dude. You can find artists out there. If you're a writer, fucking write something. Don't have AI write for you, because AI writing is hot trash. I just don't think there's any good use case for AI in games. And if you don't have the assets, either find another way to do it, or save up the assets, or make a partnership with somebody who charges you less, or sometimes you just don't do that thing. I really just don't think that AI should be put into games, especially on the creative side of things, because that's work that an artist can do. That's an opportunity that an artist can do. That's an opportunity for a writer that didn't get their opportunity. I just, as a critic, I just really have to draw that line. And I have taken a game or two recently for coverage without knowing that AI was in it until afterwards. And then I'm like, oh, great. Well, I didn't realize that was there. So sometimes it seems really innocuous, but sometimes it's like, a lot of like, the where I'm seeing it most is backgrounds. I see a lot of people using AI for backgrounds, and it's like, why, man? Like, there's so many different artistic styles. There's so many ways to do art. There's so many artists out there. I just don't see a reason for using AI for art, unless you just simply straight up don't want to pay artists. Or if you don't have the money, then you should do it yourself, or find somebody who's within your budget, right? So I think that's mostly where it is, where people just want to like hit a button and say, oh, I want a really cool sci-fi background with red stars and dark sky and alien looking trees. Boom, there it is, plug it in, and then I got my background art. Like, I don't know, I kind of feel just like, fuck off. I really kind of do. I feel like you didn't make that. AI is just stealing other people's stuff. So like, on some level, you stole something from somebody else. You didn't pay somebody. You didn't do it yourself. You didn't really earn the way that asset looks. It just feels cheap to me. It feels like a dirty shortcut, and I don't like it at all. So my personal take is keep your AI out of your games. And I haven't made an official editorial stance on it yet, but I feel like we're very close to that. And will I just straight up like not cover any game that has AI? That's something I'm thinking about. Will I automatically detract 2 points from any score because it's got AI in it? Maybe. I don't know. Possible. Haven't decided, but I really don't like it, and I would strongly encourage any game developer out there who's thinking about using AI as a shortcut because you don't have to pay an artist or you don't have to spend time on generating assets. I would strongly suggest you think again. So not for me, do not like, and will not let it pass. So yeah, not a cool thing. If you disagree, let me know. If you agree, let me know. I would be curious to hear what the listeners think of this. Are you cool with AI? Are you not cool with it? How do you think about that? What do you think about, games randomly having assets generated by generative AI? I mean, I don't know. I want to know what you think. I mean, I know what I think. Tell me what you think. All right, folks, that's it for housekeeping. Before we crack into the main portion of the show here, I want to give you a heads up. There is the So Videogames Patreon if you want to support the cost of running and hosting the show, and there is a cost every single month. If you want to chip in $1, that helps, and €1 helps that much more. If you want to pitch in, you can do that over at patreon.com/the So Videogames podcast. There's also the So Videogames Discord, which I've mentioned a couple times already. You can jump in and continue the conversation for free. Everyone is welcome. Absolutely free of charge. If you're not a Discord user and you don't know what it's all about, basically it's just a text chat channel where you can connect with other listeners and talk about the show, games, anything else you want to. If you would like to get in on that, shoot me an email and I will send you the deets. Contact info is coming up at the end of the show. All right, folks, let's see. As y'all know, I like to start the main portion with circle backs, where I circle back to things I have covered in depth on previous episodes. Not getting into all the details here right now, but just think of this as a quick update to let you know if my thoughts have changed on a game for better or for worse after spending more time with it. This week, just one circle back. I've been pretty busy with new stuff, as you're about to find out in a second. Just wanted to come back to Helldivers 2. Been talking about that a lot lately. They went through their big update just really recently. I feel like maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. They finally included a vehicle, which is nice. I've been wanting a vehicle for like way too long. They gave us a little scout Jeep kind of a thing with a machine gun mounted on the top. It's really fragile. There's only room for 3 people, and a basic Helldiver squad is 4, which sucks. The machine gun is really weak, and it's not great. So it's not the greatest vehicle, but I don't want to be too ungrateful because I've really, really, really been wanting a faster way to travel for quite some time. And I guess if you just use it as a quick getaway, then that's totally fine. So I'm glad we got a vehicle. They finally released the 3rd faction that we all knew was coming because they were in Helldivers 1. It's called the Illuminates. They are kind of like UFO type guys. They have weird, mindless zombie hordes that swarm you. They've got higher level aliens that fly around in jetpacks and snipe you. They fly UFOs in and drop off troops. So they're pretty cool. I think they're tougher than either of the other factions that we got earlier, which is fine. New challenge, and I think there's some different tactics that are involved in fighting them. That's cool. They did a collaboration with Killzone, which I think everybody's kind of surprised by. There's a new set of armor that looks just like the Hellgast armor from Killzone. If you remember what the bad guys look like, they were kind of very black, gas mask, red eyes, kind of quasi-Nazi kind of thing going on. So they did a collab where you got this armor and a gun that seemed like it was taken straight out of Killzone. Surprised me like crazy, but I mean, I guess I'm all up for more Helldivers 2 content as long as they don't lean too much into that Nazi theme. I don't think we need any more of that in the world these days. But yeah, I mean, it's okay. Still buggy. But I think that there's new stuff going on. We were desperate for new content. And I mean, I do want to be grateful that the game is still alive. I'm really hoping for this one, hoping that it comes around and finally hits its stride. So yeah, good times. I think it's a good time to jump in. If you haven't jumped in before, if you have left the game for a while, I think it's a good time to come back because you can at least see the new stuff. Fighting the Illuminates is fun because it's pretty different from the other 2 factions. You can get the car and drive around a little bit. And yeah, it's good. It's getting better. It's not great. It's not where I want it to be, but it's definitely better. So I do want to give it props for that. So maybe a good time to check back if you haven't been into Helldivers 2 for quite some time. All right, folks. So since last episode was the Game of the Year show, what this means is I did not cover the other games I was playing that week, in addition to this week's games that I was planning to cover. So we've got a pretty substantial list of titles here for you, bigger than the usual show, and I want to get these out there so I can kind of get caught up on my backlog and get ready for 2025 when we roll around. So we're going to just be hitting one right after another here, and hopefully you will be entertained. All right, first game bringing to the show today is called Venture to the Vile. Oh, and before I launch into this, I should let everybody know, in accordance with FCC regulations, every game I am talking about on the show today, I received a code for from the publisher/developer. So everything I'm talking about on the show today, I did receive a free code for, so just FYI on that. Venture to the Vile is a 2D platformer with a very creepy sort of Tim Burton-esque vibe to it. You're in this town where everybody wears an animal mask, and I don't know why that is. I think it's just the style. So they're human beings, but literally everyone, you, your friends, your mom, everybody wears a mask that has like an animal face on it. So you have like a deer, I believe. Your mom is also a deer. The game begins with you as a young child. You're going around town doing stuff, and this is all 2D. It's all, kind of pretty nice looking, kind of clean, abstract style, very Burton-esque, I think. And you get your new mask. You had a little baby deer mask, or a fawn mask, I guess, and then you get like your teen mask, which has like horns on it, and so you upgrade your mask and you just go around and stuff like that. And so you go through some stuff, and then you get sucked into this underground cave, and you encounter something called the Vile, and then the game jumps ahead, and all sorts of bad stuff is happening in town. Full disclosure, I did not play this one for very long. I will say that I did like the graphics, and I like the concept and the vibe. I mean, I'm always up for a good action platformer. Wearing the mask was kind of enigmatic, and I think, being let loose in this town where something's going on, I'm always down for something like that. But I had a couple of pretty significant problems with this game right off the bat. Number one, I felt like the controls were not quite tuned in, a little bit loose, a little bit janky. And if you're going to do a platformer, you really need to focus in on the controls. So that's number one. Number two, the performance on PlayStation 5 was not great. The character moved fine, like running and jumping. It looked visually fine, but the backgrounds were really juddery. And in fact, I even emailed the PR/developer people, and I was like, hey, what's going on with this? Is there a patch coming? And I never got a response back. So I'm guessing they probably know about it and either can't fix it or haven't fixed it yet or whatever. I don't know. But basically, as I was watching the game, the backgrounds were like juddering just a little bit, but it was enough to be noticeable, and it was also enough to make my stomach feel like literally ill. I started getting motion sickness from the juddering of the background, and I was like, okay, so maybe it's just the environment I'm in now. Let me get to a different part of the game. Maybe it's better in other parts of the game. And it was like worse in the woods and slightly better in town, but like it was still there. And I'm not going to play a game if it's making my tummy sick. I'm just not going to do it. I will not vomit for a game. There's no game good enough to make me want to puke and still play it. So that was a problem. And in terms of design, something that is a personal no-no for me is when you're doing a 2D world, like stick to 2D. I want to go left to right or right to left or whatever, vertical, up and down if you want. But the thing that I hate is when 2D developers want to add like multi-level layers that go deep in on the Z-axis, right? Like further into the background or further into the foreground. And so in this game, I did not get to the part where there's a map. I heard that there is a map later, but I heard it's not very good. But like there was no map at the part where I was playing. And it was like you would walk side to side, but then you'd go inside a house, and then there'd be another level inside there, and then you go inside another door in there, and there's like another level inside of it. And so you go like deeper inside. And for me, that's a huge no-no because I can't keep those levels straight in my head. I need some kind of like really good map. And if you're going to do 2D, then fucking do 2D. Like make it 2D. There are some exceptions to this, and I will actually get to an exception literally in this very podcast a little bit later in the show. There are ways to do this properly, but a lot of developers don't do it properly. And they put too many layers that are sandwiched in. And so you end up being on a 2D plane, but you go in and in and in and out and in and out and in. And it's just really confusing. And I feel like I get disoriented very much and I get lost. And being lost in a game is one of my like least favorite things in the world. So I bounced off this for like 3 big reasons right off the bat. But I guess in 6 months it might be okay if they patch the performance and add a better map and that kind of thing. It might be worth looking into. But Kind of like I was mentioning earlier, you only have really one chance to make a first impression, and this one did not make a good first impression with me. So despite liking the theme and the concept and some of the style, there was too many things here for me to push through. So I spent very little time with this one, and I think it probably needs another, it needs a couple patches, or it needs some smoothing out or something to make it at the very least run smoother, so you're not getting sick off of it. But, there's other issues there as well, control and the mapping and stuff like that. So Venture to the Vile, did not spend very much time with it, and I probably will never come back to that one. Next up is a game called Pine, P-I-N-E, Pine, A Story of Loss. This one is a hand-drawn, very artistic the subtitle is A Story of Loss. So it's about this guy who loses his wife, partner, and then he is just kind of emotionally devastated about it. And it's about how he deals or doesn't deal with it, how he spends his time afterwards. Great art style, very watercolory sort of, hand drawn. Like, it looks really beautiful to look at. But it's minimally interactive. And that's kind of one thing that I'm not really a big fan of when it comes to actual video games. It feels like it could almost be a short film in some ways, where you're kind of just watching little pieces of it. And then, the guy's walking through the forest, or in his memories, he's with his partner, and you see what that's like. And then you jump to the present time, and he's like in the shack in the woods, and he's just like doing nothing. He doesn't seem like he's doing very well, which I understand that. But the interaction is really minimal. Like when you walk around, you just push one button and he walks to a place, and you just watch him walking. He chops some logs, and what you do is you move the control stick from up to down, and he chops the log. And there's not a lot of interaction there. You're kind of just observing a lot of what this guy is going through. You don't have a lot of agency. You're not really guiding him in what he should do. You're just kind of watching what he does already, which is kind of what makes me say it's almost like watching a short film in some ways. Doesn't feel very interactive. And the thing that really kind of killed it for me was it's very repetitive. He's doing a lot of the same things over and over and over. And on some level, I have to assume that this is like artistic intent, right? Like maybe this character is taking comfort in the solace of doing some small repetitive actions. Maybe he doesn't want to be challenged emotionally at this time, and so he's doing things that feel safe. Like, I get that. That's a human response, and that makes sense, but it doesn't make for a very good game. And I think this is all compounded by the fact that the game kind of gets into it pretty quickly. Like, you don't spend very much time with the two of them, the man and the woman, before. So you don't really bond with them. You don't really get a good sense of who they are, where they're from, how they feel about each other. I mean, they're putting a lot of weight on the fact that we are kind of just like inferring a lot, and that we're assuming a lot, which is okay sometimes. But if you want to have a really strong emotional connection, you've got to take the player along with you. You can't just say, hey, just assume these people were like super in love and then one of them died. Like, you've got to show it. Like, you've got to show the funny moments. You've got to show the bonding. You've got to show the tenderness. And then once you've got that established, that's when you do your gut punch, right? That's just like basic dramatic action. So I feel like we did not get a good connection to the characters before we are plunged into the monotony of this guy's not dealing with grief. And so we're quickly thrown into the repetitive actions. And so he was like chopping logs, and he was like, what was he doing? He was just like walking around. I mean, it was just like, we were just these like sub mini game actions, not even to the level of a mini game, like below that, just like literally one button push, one stick push, and then you're just kind of watching this thing. I got really bored of it really quickly, just because I didn't care. I did not have emotional stakes. I wasn't invested. And I was not brought on board to be in for doing that kind of thing, without having the stakes connect with me earlier. So maybe I would have played more of it if I felt bad for the guy, or if I felt bad for the relationship or the situation, but it wasn't paced properly, and it gets you to the boring, repetitive stuff way too quickly. And I had to bounce. So I did not spend very much time with that. Certainly did not finish it, even though I think it's a pretty brief experience, but I just couldn't do it. So there you go. Pine, A Story of Loss. Next up is Flint, Treasure of Oblivion. And if you're noticing a theme here, yes, I am burning through a lot of the games that I've had in the back burner, and a lot of these I'm not going to spend a lot of time with for obvious reasons. So just strap in, folks. There is some good stuff coming. This one is not it, though. So Flint, Treasure of Oblivion. a weird mishmash of a lot of things. It's kind of a turn-based tactics game, which got me interested. It's got pirates, which has also got me interested. Some pretty good graphics in certain screenshots I saw, but there's also kind of like a randomized, it's like dice and cards kind of a thing, a deck builder kind of thing going on. To be perfectly honest, the tutorials were not great. So you start the game and it's weird to me how many times I've had this experience lately, but I started the game and I did not even know what the controls were. I could not understand how it controlled, which seems weird for someone like me who has been a veteran of the video game, of video game industry and of video games in general for like 40 plus years. When I sit in front of a game, I think controls should be pretty intuitive for the most part. For this one, I wasn't even sure what I was doing. I was like, am I even moving anything? What is even happening here? It was really bad controls, and the tutorials were not great. There's a lot of stuff happening here. There's multiple characters. There's stuff to equip. There's the dice and the cards. There's the turn-based aspect of it. There's maps and everything. And it's like, you're just kind of thrown into it without much preamble. And the tutorials are not doing a great job at all. I was pretty confused about what was going on. Everything was really difficult to parse. It seemed like it was overstuffed with too much content, too many systems, which is a shame because if not for that initial allergic reaction, I'm up for a party-based, turn-based pirate adventure. Fuck yeah, dude, sign me up. Like, I'm all about it. I love pirates. I love that kind of stuff, that theming. I would love to do that. Maybe turn-based action. We got a musket and a cutlass or something, or you got a parrot who can do aerial attacks. I don't know, anything like that. Your peg leg has a gun in it. Who knows? The sky's the limit, right? But this is another one of those cases where I think there's the bones of something good here. Like, I feel like there's something in here buried under a lot of cruft. I feel like there is the core of a good idea. Turn-based tactical pirate action, that's a winning idea. But there's just so much stuff on top of it, and the stuff that they pile on top of it is not very well explained. And so it just was so hard to sit through and so hard to get through. I didn't really quite understand what I was doing. I think I won a battle and I wasn't sure why I won it. And I was like, I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to be doing. And I don't know. It just one of those like really, really, really bad first impressions. Again, kind of the theme of today's show, an incredibly bad first impression. And I can only imagine that in another year's time, this game might be actually worth looking at if they patch it, fix the tutorials, fix the controls, clean it up and polish it up a little bit. It might be something that really would be worth spending time on as a player, but it's not in that shape right now. So yeah, pretty awful first impression, despite the fact that I suspect I might ultimately like it if it was cleaned up, but I bounced on this one almost immediately. Nothing about it was going right, despite the fact that, pirates get you pretty far with me, but just not far enough. So there you go. That was Flint, Treasure of Oblivion. Next up is a really curious one, and I strongly recommend anybody who likes artistic games or thoughtful writing in games. Anybody, if you're in the Games in the Wild or Gaming in the Wild Discord, if you're any of those GITW people, you should sit up and write this game down, because I think this game might be for you guys. Because I know I spent some time over there, Gaming in the Wild, one of my current favorite podcasts, run by John over in Reykjavik. Wonderful show. You're probably already listening to it because when I got my year-end wrap-ups, I was always in the same basket with John, and that makes me feel good because I think John does a great show. And if my show is next to his show, that makes my show look good too. So happy about that. But if you're a Gaming in the Wild person, if you're in the Discord, or if you like really artistic games, I think this one might be for you. It's called Universe for Sale. This is a 2D, kind of a visual novel, mostly a visual novel. There's some choices, a couple little small mini games, but also kind of experiential art sort of thing going on. It's a I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but it's something. First off, the art in this game is like fucking amazing. It reminds me of like Heavy Metal magazine sometimes. A little bit of Mobius perhaps in the color palette. But the lines I think are quite good. I think it's got a very attractive style. I love the way it looks. And your main character is like, it's very funny when you figure out what's going on, because he looks like a monster, like an undead kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, that's a scary monster. What's that? And then like, oh shit, it's me. I am that scary monster. You're not a monster. It's in the future. This takes place on a planet. I want to say it's like Saturn or Jupiter or something like that. I don't remember exactly. You're on another planet, and it's in the far-flung future, and you are a member of either a religious order or a cult depending on the choices you make. And from what I gather, part of advancing in this cult is removing parts of your body. And so you are like basically like mostly bones. Like you've got your skull that has very little flesh on it. It looks like your neck has been completely removed. It looks like your head is floating above your shoulders. You're just really kind of like really horrific and kind of undead looking overall. No nose and stuff like that. And everybody in the game identifies you as a member of that cult like immediately. And it's kind of weird how the story unfolds because you're not given a lot of information up front. And so based on the choices you make, kind of determine where you are and who you are and where you're from. And so you can be really aggro with people. You can answer the questions politely. You can say that you are from a cult and you escaped, or you can say, no, I'm from this religious order and I'm just killing time. And, you know, it's kind of one of those games where you kind of like define it as you go, which I think is really interesting. But it is a little bit of a fragmented story. I kind of wish there was a stronger start to it because I don't really have a good frame of reference. And so I was making a lot of choices based on just guessing or just whatever I felt at the time. I didn't have a lot of context as to how I wanted to play that character. There's not a lot of choices either. There's a lot of talking, which I think is fine. And the writing I think is pretty good. But without having the emotional investment from the start, it feels a little bit shaky. You're on shaky ground here. So you scroll through a lot of text and you hit a choice. You make a choice based on whatever it is you're basing on. And then you kind of move forward. You get these different vignettes. And I almost feel like they were told out of sequential order. I'm not 100% sure on that. And as you can tell, I'm not 100% sure of anything about this game. It feels pretty enigmatic. And I am kind of curious as to where it's going to go. But the art was really doing a little heavy lifting about keeping me in. But overall, it had a really cool vibe, which I dug. Futuristic, low-tech future, grunge future, but also these weird religious elements and also a little bit of like telling the story out of order. So pretty cool. It feels like very, I don't know, high aims for this project. But it did feel somewhat disconnected, so heads up on that. At certain points in the narrative, you will come across these mini games. And I will say these are super clunky. They didn't control very well for me. And sometimes I wasn't even sure what I was doing. There's one where you need to fix a propeller or something. There's one where you're like disarming a bomb or whatever, or you're aiming a gun or something. And it's just like it's way clunkier than it sounds. Like aiming a gun sounds like no big deal, but it was like prime the gun, unlock the thing, grab the clip, put the clip in, prime the bullet, and charge the thing. Like it was like 9 steps or something like that, and it was super clunky. So I don't think the mini games were quite successful, although I do appreciate that they are in there and it's not just text, which is always a good idea. But really fascinating. I mean, you meet like these evolved orangutans who are like living on this planet. There's like aliens. You're kind of like spending time in this weird environment. You're trying to get to know this lady who's got tentacles for hair, and she kind of is into you, but she's kind of not into you, and you have a past, but you're not sure what it is. And the art is just like fantastic. So I feel like there's like a puzzle to be unraveled here. I did not unravel it all the way. I've heard it's a pretty short experience, maybe like 6 hours, something like that. I did not finish it, but I was curious. Like I almost was going to do like a let's play just because I didn't want to play it, but I kind of wanted to see where it was going to go and see what was going to happen. But if you like that kind of artistic, weird, cerebral vibe, I think it's definitely worth a look. Maybe not exactly my cup of tea, but I bet a lot of folks in Gaming the Wilds Discord would like it. I bet a lot of Video Games listeners who like the artistic stuff would like it as well. Check it out. At the very least, see some screenshots, maybe watch a few minutes of a Let's Play and see if it's maybe your jam. So, Universe for sale. Pretty curious title indeed. All right, up next is Songs of Silence. Pretty sure this was a Kickstarter title. And this is a tactics, I guess, title, but it's also an auto battler title, which we're seeing a little bit more of these days, which I think is kind of weird. The artwork is, I think, the standout thing, and I think that the thing that most people are grabbed by. Artwork is stunning, really stunning. Great pencil lines, great colors, great balance. I really love the compositions here. Visually, it looks amazing in the hand-drawn artwork. It starts off with a huge lore dump, which is just about comprehensible. It starts off too much. I mean, it's like there's the beginning and the end, and there's these star children, and then there's these creatures, and there's other people, and this other thing, and this other land, and it's way too much information. I think could be parsed out a little more effectively later on. But you skip through that, you get to the main game, and this is another one where you don't have a strong tutorial to get you through the game. Now, I've seen people describe it as a 4X. I am not a 4X connoisseur. I don't play very many 4X games at all. It's not my genre. I got into this because I thought it was going to be more of a tactics title, which it kind of sort of is. But basically, you get into the game, you start at this hub world or hub town, and you're on a big map, and there's other towns around you, and there's tons of enemies all around you, and you're just kind of thrown into it. And I don't really quite know like what the deal was. Maybe this would make more sense if you're a 4X player and this person is, the people who are making this game are counting on a lot of previous knowledge from other games in the genre. That's possible. Not a great way to go. Not what I would recommend, but I've seen many people do that, where if you're putting out one of these games, we just assume that you've already played a bunch, so we don't have to explain anything. Bad move, because when people like me show up who want to give your game a shot, you don't teach enough. I think the tutorials were sorely lacking about a lot of things. And that coming right after a really thick lore dump was just not the greatest move. But you get into battle, and you have these little units that you're controlling on a battlefield. It's weird because you have like these really awesome hand-drawn pieces of art, but then you get to the gameplay, it looks totally different in the gameplay. You're just looking at little units, and they're little formations, and you're on a battlefield, and they just auto-control themselves. They just walk around and do their own thing. The only interaction you have is that you get cards, again with the cards. You get these cards that have cooldowns, and you can pick a card. For example, you'll say, oh, Lance Rush, and you choose that card. You get a little circle on the field. You point out where you want the circle to go, and you click the card, and enemies will attack that circle where you've specified. So that's really the only way, is like kind of indirectly influencing your troops. Hey guys, I would really like it if you would attack over here right now, or hey, I would really like to heal you guys. But other than that, they kind of just do their own thing, like running around the battlefield based on their little routines, which is not always the most satisfying type of gameplay. So I was not really sold on the gameplay. I was thinking it's going to be more of a regular turn-based tactics sort of thing. Doesn't feel like you have enough agency in the battles. And then when you're between battles, again, really confusing interface, like lots of details, lots of stuff to look at. You got to recruit troops. You got to like equip powers, but like you don't really have enough information on what to do or how to do this. They expect you just to kind of just wade into it and just find out for yourself, which is not really my favorite way of jumping into a game, especially something that looks as big as this. So not a great start. And as is the theme of today, as I've said again, you've only got really one chance to make a first impression. This game makes a really bad first impression, for me anyway. I wanted to be better tutorialized. I wanted an easier in to the story. I wanted a more clear goal about what I was doing. So yeah, not for me. I bounced pretty quickly, but interestingly, I was pretty curious about this because I had a pretty negative reaction to it, but I went to Metacritic, and it seems like people are really liking this. They're like, oh, it's a great 4X. I love it. Super strategy, super deep. So, you know, maybe it is, if you like this genre a lot and you know about this genre and you don't need the onboarding the way that I did, maybe this is something you should want to look into. I mean, I think the artwork is great in parts. Auto battling is a thing. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. Maybe it's worth a look. But for me, giving me all the wrong signals. But clearly people on Metacritic really dig it a lot. So maybe your mileage will vary. That is Songs of Silence. So as an interesting counterpoint and an unplanned one, I also played Unicorn Overlord this week. Had that on the back burner for a long time. And I think it's good that I had it on the same show because I think it's a very good counterpoint to Songs of Silence. Unicorn Overlord, coming from Vanillaware, it's basically like on paper the same game as Songs of Silence. Beautiful art. I mean, Vanillaware is known for their art, right? Wonderful hand-drawn animations and illustrations. So you're in a place where you are auto-battling, because auto-battling is in Unicorn Overlord as well. You have units, which you have in Songs of Silence, although they look a little bit different. You're also taking over a land, which is, I think, ostensibly what you're doing in Songs of Silence. You're also doing that Unicorn Overlord. So there are a lot of parallels. There's like if you were to make a spreadsheet and check off like the pros and cons of each game, I think they are more alike than they are different. They're very similar. Yet, Unicorn Overlord, successful, wildly successful in a way that I feel like Songs of Silence was not. Why? Well, let's talk about it. First, you do get a bit of a lore dump at the start of Unicorn Overlord, but it's much smaller and easier to comprehend. It's shorter, and you kind of go through it a different way. It's not just like all the info in a text crawl. Like you kind of watch the cutscenes, you see the characters, you kind of walk through it a little bit more, and it's pretty straightforward. When you get to the tutorials are way better in Unicorn Overlord. They are telling you like everything you need to know. And they'll like highlight the thing in the menu, and they'll show you the buttons to push, and they show you exactly how it works. And they even give you suggestions with your units. Hey, if you got a knight, he's probably good in front of an archer. Hey, if you got a mage, you probably want to put a shield guy in front of him. Like, they're giving you all this information because they want you to fucking play the game. And they explain the powers. Every time you do a power, you have to like walk through it. Everything you need to learn has a little side quest associated with it. So if you want the goodie, you want to get the cookie from doing the quest, you have to go do the thing. And by doing the thing, you learn the system, right? So like, they put infinitely more time into the tutorials in Unicorn Overlord. Boy, it's hard to say that. And it pays off. It really pays off, because even though these games are basically identical, Songs of Silence and Unicorn Overlord, I ended up loving Unicorn Overlord a lot. I mean, it's got tons of systems, tons of stuff going on, but I was able to keep up with it. They explained it. They shined enough light on its inner workings. The pace was great. They didn't overload you. And like, that really, that's what it really comes down to, right? Is like onboarding. Onboarding is so important. You only get one chance to make a first impression. Unicorn Overlord makes a great first impression. They really want you to get in this game. So I think that's wonderful. Basically, you are the ruler of a kingdom that gets deposed. You run away, you grow up, you come back, you want to take your kingdom back. And along the way, you have to recruit troops. You have to like gather support from the countryside. The land is divided up into like 5 huge portions. Like these, like I'm staggered at how big the map is. It's really huge. And there's like lots of little townships and villages along the way. So there's tons and tons of content. You gather your troops, and some of them are like named story characters, which I like. You can also recruit just like units like archer and swordsman, which I'm not a big fan of, but sometimes you have to get a couple of those just to round out your troops. You break up your people into little units of 2 or 3, and then you set out into the world. It's a little bit too much to get into now. I don't want to like get into the weeds too far in this game, but it's interesting because the bulk of this game's strategy isn't about putting your units together. Like for example, they start you out with a knight who's on a horse, swordsman who is you, and a shield guardian who is like one of the guys that's just with you. So that's like a unit of 3. And then like your next unit is like a swordsman, a pikeman, and like a healer or something like that. And so the groupings that you put your characters in is really where everything happens. And it's also like how you equip them. What weapons do they have? And so you do that. And when you go into battle, I'm again not going to get super far into it, but like every battle, you can basically rotate through your different units or groupings, right? So let's say you're fighting a group of knights on the world. You have maybe like 3 or 4 units put together, 3 or 4 different groups of soldiers that you have put together yourself. The game is very clear about what the outcome of the battle will be before you commit to it. So if you get this enemy group of knights, you can be like, well, before I commit to this battle, what does knights versus knights look like? And they'll be like, oh, you'll take this much damage and they'll take this much damage. Okay, well, what about the archers? And look at that. And they'll show you the outcome. What about the mages? And then you kind of see the outcome. And you can rotate through whichever one you want, and whichever one has the best outcome, you choose that one. So it kind of becomes kind of like a rock, paper, scissors kind of thing in some aspects. But there's more to it than that too, because like I said, it's about how you spec your guys. But then as you get further into it, and again, if you haven't figured out by now, this is like a systems game for sure. Like it's all about like real systems going on. So something that I just realized today towards the end of my session was everybody's got abilities. And since this is an auto battler, when you go into the battle, everything is taken care of by your troops themselves and the enemies themselves. So like I said, it's all about being ready for battle. When you get into battle, you're basically just watching. And you can skip these if you want, which I skipped probably 3/4 of them. But like you have little tactics in there, little gambits and stuff. And so let's say, for example, one of your guys has a shield. He'll shield just in general, but you can define the rules for how he shields. You can be like shield all the time, or shield only this person, or shield only the people who have less than 50% health, or never shield, or whatever. So you can have like all these conditions. And that to me was kind of like, oh shit, okay, wait, this is like a really deep game. I need to pull back a little bit. I'm starting to drown a little bit. So I've only been tinkering with this for like a little bit. Like I have this one guy who has a healing ability, and healing is pretty scarce so far in this game. So healing kind of comes at a premium, and it's nice to have a guy who can heal himself. And I wasn't sure like how or when he was healing. So I go into his menu, and the UI is good on this. I will say it's very clearly laid out. And I just was like, okay, he has no rules. So I guess the AI is just doing whatever, but you can put, okay, heal yourself only when your life falls below 75%. And then I click that. And then like, true enough, like you get in the next battle, he takes a couple points of damage. No big deal. He's still attacking. And then he takes a bigger hit, drops below 75. The very next thing he does, he heals himself. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I get that. That makes a lot of sense. You can change like whatever rules, like for offense or defense, how you use your magic spells, what are the conditions. There's like loads of conditions. So it's a little bit crazy, a little bit insane. But if you like to tinker, if you like to work with like game logic, I think this is a really neat way to do it. And you don't have to do any of it. Like you can just leave the characters as they are. It's only there if you want to. It's not required. But if you want to like optimize, if you want to min-max, if you really want to get the most out of your characters, if you want to have your units fighting exactly as you want them to without having direct control, I think this is a really interesting answer. And again, the good part is you don't have to watch the battles. You can just like set them up, and then when a battle starts, hit start. You skip the whole battle animation and just get back to the result, which I think is great. The world is huge. There's lots of places to explore, lots of towns to find, lots of tons of side quests, tons of people to recruit. Everything about it is just really great. It's really deep, really detailed, but it's not obnoxious. It's not confusing. With as many systems and as many layers as it has, they do an excellent, outstanding job of walking you through it and making sure you know what's going on at all times. And there's like a really deep, encyclopedia in the game if you want to go back and read some stuff. Been really enjoying this one so far, much more than I thought I would, because I think the auto battle thing was kind of a turn off a little bit. But once I got into it, I'm like, okay, this is actually a pretty cool system. And they're putting the gameplay focus elsewhere, not on the turn-based battles, which is fine with me, but in the strategic team building aspect, which is kind of a new thing, I think, at least for me on console. So I'm into it. I think overall it's super smooth, really beautiful, really polished, deep as fuck. I mean, I'm looking at the map. I'm like, oh God, this is probably like a 100-hour game at least. So we'll see how this goes. My only complaint, and it's not even really a complaint, it's kind of a complaint, but not really, is that Vanillaware is famous for like sexy drawings, right? Like, I don't know if you follow Vanillaware, if you know about them, but they are famous for like hugely sexualized women and men too. Gigantic heaving bosoms, like super round pneumatic bottoms, men who are glistening muscle masses. They lean into the sexuality a lot, especially in their older games. I think Dragon's Crown is the one that was probably their finest hour. But they got in some trouble for it. They got called out for, sexualizing specifically women, and the people who were at the studio got into some online fights with some journalists back in the day. And they took some heat, right? So I will say, and again, this is not exactly a criticism or whatever, but like, I like looking at sexy ladies. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's totally fine. Like it can be done in a respectful way without it being demeaning to anybody. And I think that's okay. There's a time and a place for that. And I think that the artists must have pulled back on their art style in not in Dragon's Crown, but in Unicorn Overlord, because there's barely any TNA. And I'm like, dude, what the fuck? These guys are like the TNA kings, and like everybody's wearing like full armor, men and women both. Like, I've only seen one pair of high heels the whole time. Like, it's just like, I mean, have the guys and the girls. I'm not saying it's got to be just the girls. Like, have everybody half naked. That's fine with me. I'm just kind of really sorely disappointed in not seeing more skin, which seems kind of silly to complain about, especially with how sexualized everything is these days. But it's like, dude, these guys are the masters. This is like the best thing that they do. And like, they have pulled back on it so far. I was like, oh my God, there's like no titillation in this game at all. And I honestly feel like it's a lesser game for it. I'm sure not everyone agrees, and I'm sure some people will celebrate the fact that everybody is equally clothed, which is great. I'm definitely a feminist. I definitely do not support objectifying women or men or whatever. That kind of, I mean, all the positives, right? But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with seeing somebody who's attractive. Like, this good looking person in a game that you want to look at, you're going to be playing for 100 hours. I mean, I don't think there's a problem there. So anyway, that's my only complaint. And I guess if that's my only complaint, it's a pretty small one. So I guess lacks of sexy times in the game is my only complaint. That seems kind of weird. But anyway, Unicorn Overlord is pretty boss. If you like systems, if you like high level strategy, if you like details, tweaking, min-maxing, and kind of taking a different spin on a tactics title, I think it's pretty interesting so far. I put basically all day into that game, and all day yesterday, and I'm just really enjoying it. All the different combinations. The only thing I think I'm afraid of is that I don't want the game to run out of named characters, because that's just a personal preference. I like it when a character has a name and a specific portrait, and they have a backstory, and they have relationships, and there are relationships in this game, by the way. And I like that because it feels like, all these characters are actual characters, not units. So I'm hoping that there's not going to come a point in which I have too many units. I don't mind having one or two to kind of fill out some of my groupings, but I don't want to just have like a Final Fantasy Tactics situation where you just have bunches of units and like maybe like one story character or something. I want everybody on my team to feel like somebody I care about. So that's my only concern, but that's like a million miles away right now. I'm still kind of going through the basics, still unlocking stuff, still learning stuff. So we'll see how it goes. But overall, really, really good first impression with Unicorn Overlord. Much better than I expected, honestly. And I am looking forward to putting more time into. So this one definitely is recommended if you like min-max strategy, tactics, that kind of stuff. So just don't expect any TNA or rippling beefcake either. So there you go. All right, next we have Beyond Galaxyland, which we mentioned last episode on the Game of the Year show. It was not one of our selections, but it was one that Carlos and I both had played. This is a really interesting one. This is a game that makes a very good first impression, and I have very good impressions of this game overall. It's a 2D game where you play a human being who is taken from Earth and dropped off in space. I don't want to give too much away about it because I think maybe just that whole introductory section is pretty cool. But basically you get relocated to a colony in space, and it's just, you're a fish out of water. Like you lose contact with your family, you lose contact with your home planet. You don't know exactly what's going on. And so you're just plopped in the middle of this place, and they're like, this is your new home now. Thanks. Bye. And so you got to meet people, meet aliens. You need to figure out the new way of living there. It's all very kind of like just, I don't know if I want to call it an isekai or not, but kind of a little bit like that. I think the artwork is pretty good. It's a little less animated than I would like, but I think it's pretty attractive overall. It's got a really nice vibe to it. And I really do like their approach to how the 2D world is laid out. You know, kind of this one stands in contrast to something like Venture to the Vile, where I think Venture to the Vile just goes way overboard with it. But Beyond Galaxyland is very reserved. Usually you're just on one plane, and you've got like ups and downs, and sometimes you'll be on a plane, but you'll be able to go into the foreground or the background just a little bit while not leaving the plane. Like, so for example, you'll be walking left to right, and there'll be like a rock, and you want to go around the rock, and so your character goes behind the rock and comes out the other side, but you're not going to a whole different plane. Like, you're still just like maneuvering around it, right? Or maybe there's a ladder. You can walk past the ladder, or you can get on the ladder, and those two are very, very slightly different in terms of depth, but you're not going to a different plane, which I think is great. Like, it's very minimal, very reserved. It's not confusing at all. I think they do a really good job with that. They do a good job of like listing the quests. Like, you'll meet people and they'll be like, hey, I want you to do these things for me. Find this thing, go to this place, take these pictures of this animal, like do whatever. Pretty straightforward, but I think it works well. Combat, I think, is also good. It's got turn-based combat, kind of like a JRPG sort of, where you get into combat and you'll be with at least one other person when you fight. In the beginning, you are with your, is it a hamster or is it a gerbil? It might be a gerbil. No, it's a hamster. It's a hamster who's been uplifted. And by uplifted, I mean they've been put through a forced rapid fire genetic evolutionary process where it goes from being a regular hamster to like a sapient hamster who walks upright and has a gun and has a Han Solo vest. So you're with your hamster in the beginning, and he's your partner. He's got a gun. You've got a sword. It's quite funny. I think it's very cute. So you have abilities as you do like in a normal JRPG, but there's also like a little bit of a Pokemon element thrown into it. You can fight creatures, and almost every single creature in the game you can capture like a Pokemon. So like you get them down, capture them, add them to your roster, and then they will impart different abilities. Like, you catch a little Velociraptor looking thing and he gives you like a fire spell. You catch an armadillo looking thing and he gives you like a shield spell, that kind of a thing. So you can equip different spells on your character based on which animals you capture. And it's all just very well done. I think it's all very smooth. It's very easy to understand. It's very approachable. I think the story is quite interesting, and I like the characters. I love your hamster with the Han Solo vest. It's just like too precious. It's just really good. It's really good. I like learning about the new world and having this character be dropped off in this new environment and just kind of finding his way. You're kind of learning with your character as you go, which I think is a great way to do things. So overall, I think Beyond Galaxyland is really cute and fun, well presented, well thought out. It's really appealing. Good stuff for sure. No real complaints about it at all. I think it's just a really nice thing to play. If you want a 2D kind of adventure with a little bit of Pokemon and a little bit of turn-based action thrown in, I think this is a really good choice and a really good way to go. So definite thumbs up for Beyond Galaxyland. Interestingly, I played something else that is a good counterpoint to Galaxyland. Didn't plan this. It's kind of weird that the show worked out like this, where I had Songs of Silence and Unicorn Overlord, which are kind of like mirror images of each other. And now we have Beyond Galaxyland and Beyond Horizons, which I think are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Not exactly, but very similar. Beyond Horizons is a 2D detective sim where you play a woman who is on a generational ship in space. And if you don't know what that means, basically it's when humans get on a spaceship, and they're going to go to a place that's so far away that it's going to be longer than the span of a human's life in order to get there. So they are planning to have kids, and then those kids will be trained to take over the ship. And then those kids will have kids to take over the training of the ship and the running of the ship. And so by the time the ship finally gets to where it's going, we're talking it could be any number of generations after the people who launched the ship. That's a generational ship. So that's what they're on. It's a pretty interesting concept and pops up every so often in sci-fi. Basically, you're on this generational ship. Everybody who's on the ship now is not expecting to live long enough to get to where they're going. There's going to be at least a couple more generations. So you're just in space. And what happens is somebody starts committing crimes. And so you don't quite know what's going on. It seems like it should be all for one for all, because you're all in this spaceship together. There's no chance of going back. They left everybody behind. It seems like you should be all focused on the mission, but there are some dissidents and some unrest. And so you need to quickly figure out what's going on. The art is not the greatest. I wouldn't mind a little more detail, a little more animation in the art, but I think it gets the job done. I love the concept, though, and I like the idea. If you're familiar with Star Trek or something, like basically you're playing the role of like Odo from Deep Space Nine, or Worf from Next Generation. Basically, just like a security officer on a ship, and you're figuring this out. So once things go down, you've got to go around and ask questions, put clues together, find the clues, and figure out what the heck is going on and who's doing what. I love this concept. I love this approach. And it's interesting that this year, 2024, I've played several detective games, and this is the year when I really feel like people are largely stepping up what they are asking of players in terms of being a detective. I can think of a couple right off the top of my head where I'm like, yeah, you were a detective, and this is way more than just doing detective vision in a room and picking up one clue. It's like you pick up clues, find the clues, maybe figure out where the clue even is, and then once you find that clue, what do you do with it? A lot of brain power being required this year that on a scale that I not have really seen before. So I'm really curious about that. I don't know what it is. Maybe there was like a detective game jam at some point, or maybe there was an email that went out to all the indie developers that was like, yo, up your game when it comes to your logic processes. I don't know what it was. Something in the water, maybe. Cosmic rays, who knows? But I'm just noticing that as a trend this year. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's not. So the 2D art is just kind of okay. Great concept. And I like what they've done with it. I think that moving around is pretty good. The ship is laid out in a way so, like, since it's a circular ship, you can walk to one end and loop back around to the other, because you're basically in a round kind of rotating ship. So it makes sense the way it's laid out. There's not too many locations, which I think is very important in a game like this, especially for one that asks you to like go to these places and find things. But I think it's interesting because the writing is really good and you have choices. And in this game, they open with a very strong warning of like, they're like, hey, this game autosaves every like 4 fucking seconds. And if once it saves, there's no going back. You can't undo your choice. There's no reloading an old save. Whatever fucking happens. So fucking deal with it. And I'm like, oh shit. Feels like they're getting serious right off the bat. And I appreciate that. It definitely ups the stakes. Definitely makes me agonize over my choices a little harder than I normally would. So I think that's okay. That's cool. I'm down with that. The only issue I have with it so far is I think the puzzles are... Some of them have been good, where I feel like I've been challenged and I really had to think about things, and that's fine. But some of the puzzles I feel like are not quite good enough, and it's hard to explain, but they really do require you to do a little bit more independent thinking on your own, which I'm just not used to in a game. It's not something that we're asked to do very often. I will say the one puzzle that I kind of didn't care for was in the beginning. I'm not going to spoil anything, but basically you had to figure out where a piece of paper came from. And so you're on a ship, limited resources, limited opportunity for paper to be around because not everybody has paper. It's a very controlled resource. And so you had to check in with a series of places to figure out, do you have paper? Yes. And if so, where did it come from here? Like I said, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but basically once I had collected all the clues and started like looking at the puzzle, I'm like, I don't feel like there's enough information here, and I don't know how they expected me to come up with the answer. I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it. It was kind of like math intensive, and I was looking at it and I figured out the numbers, but I'm like, this is just not enough information. I don't feel like I can conclusively draw an answer from how this puzzle is laid out. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm just too dense for this, but like I went over it like a while because I knew the save, right? If I make the wrong choice, the save's going to save and I'll be fucked. And I don't want to accuse the wrong person. I don't want to do the wrong thing. So I gave extra time to this puzzle, and I gave up because like I couldn't come to an answer that made sense to me. So I looked it up online and I got the answer, and it was like, the answer was what I felt like was in my gut, but I had no real proof. It was just intuition. I was like, even when they explained the answer to me, I'm like, that's not enough information. I don't know how you got to this answer. So that kind of soured me a little bit. Didn't care for that very much. I really wanted to be able to put the pieces together clearly, even if it took a little work. And up until that point, I had been able to do that. It took a little legwork, to do, but I got it. But this was the one where I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. And I don't understand how I was supposed to figure that out. So that was a bit of a damper. But even so, I think this is quite a cool game. My only other complaint basically is that there's not enough fast travel points. You can basically warp around the ship wherever there is like a quote unquote train stop, but there just isn't enough train stops. And I wish like you could just go straight to the room you want to go to. I don't understand why they made it so difficult to get around. And the ship is not huge, to be fair. Ship is not huge, but I ended up going to these couple places that were like as far as possible from where I was, and I had to go to them multiple times, and there was no quick fast travel, and it started to get a little irritating. I'm like, okay, look, this is just put me there, man. Like, what is the damage? There's no reason I can't just warp there. So I think that was slightly irritating. The amount of walking back and forth is kind of irritating, but overall, I dig it. I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty cool. I'm gonna count it in the bucket with the other detective games I played this year, and there's actually quite a few, and I think they're pretty interesting. So if anything I said sounds good, I think it's definitely worth checking out. And I believe it's a fairly short play, like 4 or 5 hours. I have not finished it, but it seems like something that if you just sit down and put your mind to it, you could probably knock it out in a day or two. So that is Beyond Horizons. Last game of the show is the first time I'm officially talking about it, although it was one of my games of the year in last week's episode. It was, I believe, number 10. This is Shadow Tactics: Aiko's Choice, and this is a standalone DLC that belongs to, of course, Shadow Tactics: Blades of the Shogun. That game was released in 2016, so nearly 10 years ago-ish or whatever. A significant amount of time before. That was the game that really like lit my brain on fire with the work done by a studio called Me, who are no longer making games. They have dissolved their studio. They hung it up. I don't know where the developers went to, if they just quit games altogether or if they joined other studios or what, but they said they were very tired, like physically tired of making games. And I understand it, because the games that they make are incredibly detailed, nuanced, like rich, deep, and intensive. I can only imagine it's a nightmare to make those. But they made 3, Shadow Tactics, Desperados 3, and Shadow Gambit. And all 3 of those are just like total classics, like top of their genre, which is basically, I don't even know what to call it, like turn-based tactics, but with a slightly real-time element. The hook to all of these games is basically that you have a team of like 5 or 6 people. They all have different abilities, and you go through these huge maps that are very nuanced. There's like little areas in each map where they're kind of like chunks of action. You're going from point to point in each map, and in order to progress, you've got to use everybody's abilities in very specific ways. You get ninjas and samurai here in Aiko's Choice, and what that usually means is you'll find a series of guards that are maybe, keeping watch over something, and you got to get in there. One ninja could not do it, but you have like 5 or 4, 3-4 ninjas and a couple other guys have different powers. And so you have to assign them all each one thing to do, and then you can trigger off all those abilities at once. And that's kind of like the jam of this entire series, and kind of the thing that Me sort of like cornered the market on. So like as an example, there was one section in Aiko's Choice here, which is samurai and ninja themed, because that is what Shadow Tactics is all about. So you have a room that is really tough to get through. There's like a couple guards, there's a heavy guy, Maybe there's a watchman or something like that on a tower. And so basically, like, the way to get through that, one character can't do it. So you pause the game, and then you take, like, your first ninja, and he's going to throw a shuriken at one guy. And then you take your second ninja, and she's going to stab him in the back of the neck with a hairpin. You take your third ninja, she's going to run out of a bush and stab that guy. And then you take your sniper guy, who's really fun. He's got a peg leg, and his peg leg is the sniper rifle, which is a hoot. You position him in a way, and he can shoot the guard who's at the tower on the far end. And then you get your samurai, who is like a heavy, sneak him around the back and get him ready to stab the other samurai who's guarding there. Now, you got to do all those things at once. So you move everybody into position at the simultaneously. Pause, move everybody. Once everything is unpaused and the clock is running again, you hit a button, and then everybody does their thing all at once. So all 5 attacks happen at the same time, which means no one gets the chance to raise the alarm, no one gets to scream and run away, and no one can take action, because if you only had 1 or 2 ninjas, they would kill 2 people, but then the other guards would see, and they would respond, and you would just fuck the whole thing up. So doing those kind of actions, like multi-level, multi-step, multi-character actions simultaneously, is really the bread and butter of all of these games put out by Me. And I love it. It's fucking fantastic. I think it's really great. I love the ninjas. I love the writing. I love everything about these games, because I am a tactics guy. I play basically all the tactics stuff, and I think these are just like the best possible things that there could be. So Aiko's Choice, what the fuck? It comes out like so long after the main game. I talked about this earlier, but basically Shadow Tactics came out. I loved it. They put out a DLC that was PC only at the time. I don't know why it's PC only. I never thought I would get a chance to play it on console. I was really sad about that, but I really didn't want to play it on PC because I'm just not a PC guy. So I waited and waited, and it never came. And then their whole fucking second game came out. And I'm like, well, shit, I guess they're not going to put that DLC out. What the hell? And I don't know why it came out now, but somebody found it, and they're like, you know what? Let's monetize this bitch. We're supposed to put this out on PSN. And they did, which I'm really glad about. So this is DLC to a game that came out almost 10 years ago. It takes place in the middle, well, the last 3/4 of the campaign. You get through the main campaign 3/4 of the way through. You pause. You do the DLC. It's like a side story that gives you greater insight into some of the characters. And I would imagine it would really enjoy, I don't know, it would increase your enjoyment of the story, I think, because I know how that story turns out and I know what happens. And after comparing that with what happens in the DLC, I feel like it would be a richer experience if you did pause the main game and do the DLC first to see what happens there and then come back. So I think that's, it would have been a cool thing to be able to do back then. I'm glad I played it now. But it would have been double cool back then. It is a standalone DLC, so you can just buy it by itself. You do not need to own Shadow Tactics to play it. But I will say, it's hard. It's really hard. I feel like this is like the masterclass exam if you have mastered the systems that are present in Shadow Tactics. And you have to kind of already know what's going on. So there is tutorials. If you've never played the game before, you can jump in. You can just kind of learn along with what's going on. But it's going to be rough, bro. It's going to be real hard. You're going to die like a lot. And even me, who has played through all of the campaigns of all 3 games and all the DLC for all 3 games except for this, I mean, I feel like I'm as well versed in these systems as a person can be and not be on the development team. And even I was like, oh my God, these are so hard. Like, they're really challenging. So I feel like they definitely cranked up the difficulty for people who wanted that. And it was... It's tough. It was tough, man. I'm not going to lie. I think the first level took me something like 3 hours to get through. You had a couple smaller levels, and there was like another like 2-hour level to get through. So it's not a huge piece of DLC. I think ultimately there's like 6 levels to it. But considering that some of them can be, 2-3 hours a piece, it ends up being a fairly sizable thing, especially if you don't know how to play the game. It would just, yeah. It's like, as good as this is, and as much as I enjoyed it, and I'm as glad as I am to have played it, I can't really recommend it unless you have already played the base game of Shadow Tactics, because you would just be putting yourself through a world of hurt. But if you have played Shadow Tactics and you want more, this is the shit. Like, it's really great. I'm really so grateful to play it. I feel like I was reunited with a long lost friend. I got to find this like very valuable thing that had been lost for a long time. I never thought I would get the chance, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to play through it. Finally filled that gap in my me knowledge, which is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. So absolutely love it. I think it's great. It's top of its class, but it's for people who already know Shadow Tactics. And if you don't know any of the Me games, they get my highest possible recommendation. I think these people, even though the studio is no longer together, are absolute best of the genre. They were like pathfinders. They were trailblazers. They were really laying down some new ground. And I know that other PC games have kind of done similar things, but Me, I think, is really the ones that really nailed it, you know. And a lot of tactics games I have played since then have followed very squarely in Me's footsteps. So I think that people owe them a great deal of respect for the work they did. So there you go. Shadow Tactics, Aiko's Choice. I played it on PlayStation. I think it's also on Xbox. And in case you can't tell, like I just said, I strongly recommend these if you like tactics. But please do yourself a favor and play Shadow Tactics first. Otherwise, it's going to be rough, bro. For reals. Okay, the game portion of the show is now officially done, but like many humans, I do spend a few minutes a week in front of screens that do not have menus or life bars. That's right, it is time for the TV and movie roundup. All right, the first thing is a series of shorts that are on Netflix. It's an Australian program. It's called You Can't Ask That, and it is a documentary. It's a series of it's 2 seasons so far, and all the programs are about a half an hour, and they all have different topics. They are topics of discussion that are submitted from, I guess, just random people in the world, and they ask them of very specific people. So, for example, one of the groups was fat people, and it was all about questions that you might consider to be too rude to ask in public, unless you're an asshole. And then these people answer it very, matter-of-factly. It was little people was one of the topics, fat people. There were people with facial differences, which they all had some type of syndrome or disease or accident that had them disfigured. There are polyamorists. There are kids who have gay parents. There are a whole bunch of people, people who are drug addicts and things like that, gambling addicts and things like that. So every one of these topics I think is really interesting. They ask a lot of really difficult questions, and the people are just game for it. They really answer them honestly and directly. I feel like you're getting a real slice of very valuable humanity by seeing the differences and similarities in all of these people who have walked different paths through their life. Some of them, I have to imagine, would be quite difficult. A lot of challenges that probably most people don't face in their life. I mean, I know everybody thinks they got it hard, and I sympathize with that. But, man, some of the people definitely got it harder than others. That is for sure. So it was really heartening to see a lot of these people, the way that they take all these things in stride and the things that they've overcome. And I'll be honest, man, I cried a couple times during some of these. I get so touched with some of these, and I just feel like, holy shit, I feel for you so much, person on the TV, or, oh my God, that must have been so hard to get through, or I can't believe somebody asked that, or just seeing them talk about their personal experiences and getting that little taste of the breadth of humanity is just oh man, wonderful. Made me feel fucking alive. It made me feel good to be here and to I don't know, just kind of celebrate people just in general. It's rare that I see something like that where you just get this unabridged look at something that you might think about or you might wonder about. And I'm really glad that these Australian folks put it together. Definitely best recommendation possible. Enjoying the fuck out of that. I think it's a great family show. We've had lots of really good discussions about the topics. I think it's just wonderful stuff. So that is called You Can't Ask That. It's on Netflix. We recently started watching Doctor Who again, the recent reboot, not the old stuff, but the stuff that got rebooted, 10, 15 years ago or something like that. We're in the season 3 where David Tennant is the Doctor, and we are watching, which I think has consistently been one of their favorite episodes. Often whenever you ask people what's their favorite Doctor Who episode, this one comes up a lot in the voting and in the polls. It's called The Girl in the Fireplace. That's the specific episode. Of course, I think it helps if you have knowledge of what Doctor Who is. Time-traveling alien is in the TARDIS, which looks like a blue phone box, and he has adventures and stuff like that. But this is one where he finds a space station. I'm not going to spoil this. It's fine. Don't need to rush to turn off your sound. He finds a space station which has a temporo-spatial portal inside of it, and he doesn't know why. But he's 3,000 years in the future, and that portal goes back to 1700s France. And so the portal is made to look like a fireplace so that it blends into a house. And so he's looking through the portal. It appears as though he's in the fireplace, but he's actually on the other side of the portal. And he sees a young girl in there, and he says hello to her. And she's like, "What are you doing in my fireplace? What is going on?" And basically, every time he enters her side of the portal, time passes differently. So when he goes back to the space station, it feels like for him it's only been 5 minutes, but for her it's been 10 years. And so they kind of go back and forth with him popping up and out of her life, back and forth, and seeing her grow over time. It's pretty cool. I'm not going to say anything else about it. I think that's more than enough to give you a sense of what it's about. But I think there's a good reason why this one often comes up as people's favorite. I definitely recommend it. And if you're only going to watch a couple episodes of Doctor Who, I think this is definitely one that you should watch for sure. And the last thing that we've been watching is Murdoch Mysteries. I talked about this earlier. This has become like our go-to comfort show, me and my wife, when we get up in the morning or when we just want to snuggle on the couch or something. We are watching the show. We're like in season 5, I think, and there's like, I think 13 or 14 seasons of it. At first I was like, damn, that's like a lot of seasons. But now that I'm watching, I'm like, oh God, that's not enough seasons. I need more seasons of this. This is the story of a Toronto police detective in the year 1898 or 1899, right before the turn of the century. And so a lot of technology has not been developed yet. He's a very smart, bookish guy. He reads a lot of science books, and he uses those things that he reads in the books to kind of like advance police technology. So he like kind of invented fingerprinting. He invented like a UV light. He invented security cameras and stuff like that, all using the 1890s technology. It's all like super big and clunky and weird looking, but you can totally see what they're doing here, you know. And of course it's fiction. It's just a fun time, but like he meets up with like Nikola Tesla and a couple of like famous people from back in the day. And then he like does a cool invention, and then he solves a crime. But it's just really charming too. I think he's a good actor. The lead guy is named Yannick Besson. I believe he is from Quebec in Canada. I think so. And so he does a great job. His supporting cast is all great. The chief of police is great. His supporting constable is great. And he has a on again, off again love affair with the lady coroner who works there. Her name is Dr. Julia Ogden. And they have this like really like simmering romance, but it's the 1890s, so neither one can really talk about it too much. And then social circumstances kind of keep them apart, and they want to be together, but they can't for one thing or another. And it just kind of goes back and forth. And oh man, I gotta say, as someone who appreciates a good romance on TV, it kills me. It fucking kills me the way that they handle this, because I really want them to get together and they just haven't gotten together yet. And it's just driving me mad, I say. But it's wonderful. I love Murdoch Mysteries. I think it's great. It's like a super fun comfort show. You know what you're going to get when you watch it, but it's still fun anyway. And I love the characters. And it's just me and the wife snuggling under a blanket and just watching that is like the best thing. We watched so many episodes during the Christmas break, and it's just, we're going to watch more. So there you go, folks. That's a show. Before the closing music, I would love for you to leave reviews, share the show on social media, but most important of all, please recommend So Video Games to your friends, because nothing beats good old word of mouth. Also, if you would like to support the show and help with the cost of running the podcast, you can do that. Patreon.com/the So Video Games Podcast if you want to kick in $1 or €1. If you want to join the Discord, that is free of charge. You can just send me a request via email or on any of the channels, and you can jump in. Just let me know you want to join, no problem. And as usual, I would love to get your questions and comments. Hit me up in the So Video Games Discord, email, social, whatever. But you can email me directly at sovideogamespodcast@gmail.com. On social, you can find me on Instagram and Blue Sky. It's my name. It's BRADGALLAWAY. All A's, no O's. And this is going to do it for the epic, gargantuan, mammoth episode 421. Thank you so much for joining me here on the So Video Games Podcast, and I'll see you next week.